Hey, real fast before we start, Mike, Todd, you guys need to switch. Why? Because you said you wanted to be the villain next time, and that's kind of like the bad player seat.
Oh, sweet. Does this mean I get to be the good player for once?
You do.
Awesome. Dude, switch with me quick before he changes his mind.
Hello Internet, Seth Skorokowski, and today we're going to talk about cheating. I've done a video about metagaming and mentioned in there's a distinct line between meta and cheating. I've also talked about Game Master fudging and how intent is the big difference between a fudging Game Master and a cheating Game Master. So today we're going to go over cheating players. There are a lot of ways that players can cheat. There's the dice cheat, such as faking or hiding their rolls. There's even YouTube videos out there saying how to cheat at dice for all those cheaters in training that might want to know more. I've even got a set of cheater dice that a player got me once as a gag gift. It came with the stipulation that if he ever saw me using them on either side of the game screen that I was going to get a beat down, and he could definitely do that. But it's got dice with duplicate faces, such as we have a regular D20, and then we also have a second D20 that's got two 20 faces on it. The dice cheat is one who might shield their dice with their arm or a wall of books, or just snatch up the dice the instant it hits the table saying,
"Sweet, another critical hit."
There's the book cooker, the player who cheats their inventory or spells, always conveniently having that item or that ammunition or spell slot that they might not have had just a moment before. They might conveniently forget to note certain things like damage they took, or might not deduct the full damage they took, only noting a little bit of that. Catching them can be hard because often they're going to claim that it was an honest mistake, and honest mistakes do happen, but these players do it intentionally. The blind eye. They can cheat by ignoring spell or power limitations, such as that part that says they can only perform that power once a day, and now they're using it every 3 minutes. Then when you catch them, they shrug and say they must have missed that part by accident, but we all know they didn't. And of course the peeper. These are the ones who might sneak a peek behind the screen while the Game Master is out of the room, or find out which module the Game Master is running and then go out, download the module, and read it before the game begins. There are tons of ways that players can cheat. We could spend a whole video just listing all of them out, and I would still miss half of them. There's a lot of blogs and YouTube videos and forum threads out there discussing ways that Game Masters can protect themselves from cheater, many even going to bizarre links, just to protect their game from cheating players, or just having the fear of cheating players. A year or so ago, I was reading a Facebook group thread, and I deeply regret that I didn't actually get a screenshot of this, but one commenter said something to the extent of, "I won't use pre-printed modules because all players will cheat and read the module." Now when I read this, I had a sudden flood of thoughts. Why are you playing with a group of cheaters? Are they cheaters, or are you just paranoid because that's what you would do? Are they now cheaters as a result of you treating them like cheaters? And what the hell do you mean by all players? All players is a pretty big group, and that also includes my players in it. And my players aren't cheaters. In fact, I trust my players. I wouldn't play with them if I didn't trust them, and they wouldn't play with each other if they didn't trust each other. The distrust that a lot of Game Masters have towards players, acting as if they're all just 1 second away from rampant cheating, really only feeds that player versus Game Master mentality that I've talked about before. It's not healthy for your group in my experience, and I am a whole lot happier playing with people that I trust. Why do players cheat? Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe they feel the game is too challenging or unbalanced, and they feel that they're evening out the playing field a little bit by cheating, rather than discussing it and resolving the larger issue properly like adults should do. Maybe they don't feel the game is unbalanced, they just don't like to lose. They're the kind that always puts a video game on the easiest setting because losing, or just having a bad die roll, isn't an option that they find acceptable. Maybe they just like the thrill of it. They know they're doing something wrong, and the risk of getting caught and the excitement of cheating is its own reward, a game within a game.
That's right. It's not cheating unless you catch me, and your job as a Game Master is to catch me.
Or maybe they honestly don't see a problem with it.
Yeah, it's just a game. It's not like any of this matters. You're just blowing this out of nothing.
I personally notice a trend with the players who think this way is that they're very rarely the ones who have invested that much, if any, money into things like, books and miniatures or any of that. They're most often the most casual of gamers and are pretty new to the hobby. Now, normally in videos like this, we then list all the ways that a game master can, wrangle their cheaters or their potentially cheating players into being honest, expending all this effort trying to catch them or forcing them to roll out in the middle of the table underneath a spotlight or something, regularly auditing their character sheets, closely monitoring all their spells or powers to make sure that everything is above board. Or maybe if you think that one of your players has read the module that you're trying to run in order to get an edge on it, how you can carefully change and adapt that module. That way all their knowledge that they have about it won't help them, but also be able to out them as being a dirty, dirty cheater at read the book. But I'm not going to do any of that because I don't think that game masters should have to. The only reason that I look over my players' shoulders or audit their character sheets from time to time isn't because I don't trust them. It's because I want to double check that they're doing everything correctly and not making any honest mistakes. And sometimes I do find that they're doing something wrong, but just as often those are things that are the player's disadvantage as they would have been to their advantage because they're honest mistakes. As I said, I trust my players. I fully trust them. That's the baseline. You don't play in my game unless I trust you. Trust is given, distrust is earned. So to explain why I feel this way, let me share my background on this as well as tell you a story. I started playing role-playing games when I was 13, starting with first edition AD&D. The Dungeon Master was one of our dads and he'd been playing for years. Now, one thing that he enforced was because back in that edition, spellcasters had to list specifically which spells they had memorized for that day. So we had to write them all down on a note and then hand that note to them as far as what our memorized spells were going to be. I didn't think about much at the time because I just thought that's how you played the game. And some optimist out there might assume that he was doing that. That way he could tailor the game to make sure we could, use all our spells and everything would be perfect for whatever loadout we gave ourselves. But the truth is that he was really just keeping us honest. We were committing to what spells we had memorized that day. That way we couldn't just swap them out on the fly as we need them. It was really smart of him to do that because we were a bunch of 11 to 14-year-old dishonest little monsters. Not me. I was honest. Okay, there was this one time in Secret of Bone Hill, I said that I made a saving throw that I really didn't, and I don't know why I said that, and I instantly felt bad because I knew that I was lying and that the Game Master trusted me to tell him the truth, and it's now been 29 years since that happened, and I still remember that. But other than that single black mark on my soul that I'm sure that I'm going to regret forever, I was an honest player. Okay, except for that one other time, but that's not the point. Let's get back to this video. Many of the other players, the less honest ones, had the "it's not cheating unless you catch me" mentality, and my big introduction to that happened when I was 15 or 16. I was running the Lankmar campaign Nawan, and one of the player characters had something happen to them, so I pulled them into another room to share some information with them as far as what their character had learned. That way the rest of the player characters and the PCs wouldn't know yet. Now, once we were done and we stepped back into the main room, I discovered one of the players standing behind my screen reading the game module, and everybody looked up and they were all like, "Haha, it's your fault for leaving it out because keeping the players honest is a dungeon master's job." It bothered me, but I went along with it, and after that I never left my notes unattended again anytime I left the room to go to the bathroom or anything, because we were playing in a game where not only did trust not exist, but trust was openly mocked. Then a few years later, my freshman year at college, I started a new group, and it was a night and day difference from the ones that I'd been playing with before. We were all older, and all of us cared about the game, and my players were quick to point out things that maybe we were doing wrong that would have been to their disadvantage, and they were very honest about things, and they really liked also having minuses and obstacles to overcome that they could have just tried to ignore and cheat their way past. And those games were incredible. We had so much fun. I stopped collecting the post-it notes, their daily spells, because I really didn't want to have these. I had enough stuff that I was keeping track of, and this was just muddying things up behind my screen, and now I trusted my players. It was a completely different experience than what we'd had before. But as players ended up coming and going between the group over that time, and we had cultivated a really good team of players, but then we brought in a new player. We'll call him Mike.
How y'all doing?
Mike was a cheater.
Allegedly.
That's right, it was never proven. Mike was allegedly a cheater. You see, there was never one solid moment we could hold up and say that this proves right here that you are a cheater. So what I'll do is I'll show you the evidence and let you, oh my viewers and only friends, be the jury and decide. And more importantly than that, show you the effects that this accused cheater had on the group, whether they were actually cheating or not. First, Mike would say things like,
Ain't cheating if you don't get caught. Am I right, boys?
now all of us said jokes like that, but when Mike said it, there was an air of seriousness to it. But does joking about it make him a cheater? No, not at all. Next were Mike's rolls. Mike hid his rolls. Not directly, mind you, but he rolled really close to his body, behind a wall of books and cans and foods, different stuff that sort of sealed it in. He claimed that it kept his dice from rolling across the table, but the other side effect of that is we really couldn't see what his dice said. He also had the tendency to be a snatcher, you know, the one that picks up the die the millisecond it hits the table.
Boom! 19, I hit! Check it out!
Does sketchy dice behavior make him a cheater? No, it's a warning sign, but it doesn't mean that he's cheating. His rolls, however, were suspect. You see, Mike had good rolls. Not amazing. He still failed, he still fumbled, he still got frustrated with a string of bad dice rolls from time to time, just like everybody else. But on a long enough timeline, his average rolls were just that little bit better than normal, and the other players began to notice.
Dude, Mike has been cheating. Yeah, no way did he make all those saves. We need to keep an eye on him.
But do slightly better rolls make him a cheater? No, it's suspect, but also, were his rolls really that much better than everyone else's? Or were we just being overly suspicious, and whenever he had a good streak, we just assumed it was cheating, but he was just having a good streak like the rest of us might have had? But the key word here is suspicious, because everyone was beginning to react to this. And when we'd say, hey man, can you roll out in the open? He'd respond with,
What, you think I'm cheating? I'm assaulted by that. I demand an apology.
but he would comply and he'd roll out in the open for a while, but it really wouldn't take that long before that wall of books and glasses came back, sort of sealing his dice away from view. But his offense to our suspicion was so extreme that nobody wanted to rock the boat until we had actual proof that he was cheating, and it made things uncomfortable, like really uncomfortable. But at the same time, nobody wants to be that jerk who's accusing people of cheating when they're really not. Does getting offended at the mere suggestion he's acting shady make him a cheater? No, a cheater would get openly offended and deny they were cheating, but so would most people. Then there was bookkeeping. Mike seemed to always have that one item that they needed.
Guys, my character is hurting bad. We might need a rest for the day. I got a healing potion you can have.
Thanks. Wait, didn't you use that one already?
Nope, that was a different one. I got this one right here on my sheet.
You guys only found one healing potion in the dungeon.
Yeah, it's from the previous adventure, the one at the castle.
We used that one in the forest. Yeah, dude, you used that one already.
Oh, did we? I must have just forgotten to mark that off my sheet. My bad.
Mike always either had that one item they needed, or he conveniently forgot to mark off any ammunition, potions, or supplies. His hit points were sometimes a bit sketchy as well, too. Like he might have forgotten to note some damage that he took because he frequently seemed to have just a little bit more hit points than he should normally have had. Does terrible bookkeeping make him a cheater? No, I mean terrible bookkeeping is a problem, but it's a problem that can be dealt with. It's not necessarily intentional, but it doesn't make you a low-down, dirty cheater if you've got bad bookkeeping. My players had other opinions, which they often shared with me.
No, he is cheating. I know it in my soul. My black soul knows it to be true, and this has to stop. Dude, he gets so offended if we even act suspicious, and he's always got an excuse. Then we catch him red-handed or never give him a chance to cheat again. The honor of the game is at stake.
Now one thing, when you see blogs or videos that are covering dishonest players, it's almost always framed as if it's being a game masters that have to deal with it almost exclusively, or that it's primarily a game master problem, sort of promoting the narrative that, game masters and players are separate and conflicting entities. That's simply not true, because I will tell you right now that as much frustration and as much anger that a game master might feel about having a cheating player, no one, and I mean no one, hates a dishonest player more than an honest player does. An honest player knows that they have the game master's trust, and they know that every experience point and every gold piece that they have was earned correctly, and they've taken all the risks and they've played the game right. So when they see somebody that's cheating, that not only offends their sensibilities of, hey, you didn't earn that glory, but it also feels as if the integrity of the game and their own accomplishments are now going to be called into question. So while game masters might be irritated or upset that they've got a cheating player, honest players take it a whole different level of personal whenever they see one. Mike also had a spellcaster, and very often his spells were pretty questionable. He always seemed to have chosen that perfect selection of spells every single day, and that would vary day to day. Sometimes he had more spell slots at a certain level than he really should have, which he always claimed was a bad bookkeeping mistake whenever we called him out on it. So I had to institute an old rule. He had to write down his daily spells for me, and to be fair, everyone's spellcasters had to do that as well. I hated having to police players and add to my own paperwork, but it is a tried and true method to keep players honest. However, the number of spells wasn't the only issue. Spell descriptions usually came under question. Often when a player announces that they want to cast a spell or use some power like that, I might question them, ask for certain details such as the range and the damage and what saving throws are allowed, if any, and Mike had a tendency to sort of miss certain details when he was giving me what this summary was. Now those orcs are 120 feet away. Can your spell even hit them?
Oh yeah, it is well within range.
No it's not. The range is 60 feet. It says so right in the beginning.
Dang, you're right. I guess I missed that one. I guess I'll cast a different spell.
Every single time that Mike cast a spell, two of the other players would pull that book up and read along with them. I never asked them to do this, but I appreciated it, but this is something that they did on their own. And it was amazing how often Mike seemed to accidentally miss some part of the spell description whenever he was reading it aloud to me, often skipping portions or sentences entirely. He always claimed that it was a mistake and he was just paraphrasing the key points for me and just happened to miss that part. And I suppose it could just be pure coincidence that the parts that he always accidentally missed were always the ones that would have been to his disadvantage in the situation that he was trying to use it in, and they were never ones that would have been to his advantage. So does sketchy spell usage make him a cheater? Maybe these were honest mistakes as he claimed, though the frequency and the fact that his mistakes were always to his benefit were suspect. Maybe the reason we kept seeing cheating was because we were looking for it. I mean, he always had an excuse to his error, and maybe he was being honest. In the end, we can't prove it, but this was the closest we came to proving it, so I'm going to give it a maybe.
No, Mike is a cheater.
Yeah, cheaters are always making excuses. And look how often he did it. He had more honest mistakes than everybody else combined.
Yeah, on the individual scale, no. But once you start totaling it all up, the dice, the spell slots, the spell descriptions, the questionable hit points, all that together says cheater, cheater, pumpkin eater.
I don't think that's how that rhyme goes.
Well, it should. And Mike is still a cheater.
Eventually Mike left the group, and the rest of the group carried on. The first session was no big deal, but after the second or third session,
I have really been loving the last few games, like way better than normal.
Yeah, it's like I always had this little bit of stress and I'm not feeling it anymore, and I like it.
I wonder why that is. I mean, it all started after...
Oh. And that was when it really clicked. We hadn't realized that how much trying to stop Mike's cheating had been distracting us from the game. Not just the resentment that we were harboring for the fact that we all knew that he was doing it, but the distraction from us trying to stop him or catch him at it was pulling us away from the game. It was taking up time as well as mental and emotional energy that we could have been spending instead on the game and having fun. And none of us knew how miserable we were about it until it was gone. So when people say that a cheating player is no big deal and doesn't hurt anything, or that it's only something game masters have to deal with, I disagree with that. And because I've had such a sharp contrast in playing with somebody that I don't trust to playing with an entire group that I trust fully, I am never going back to that. A game master or an honest player shouldn't have to waste their time and their energy policing a cheater, or worrying about who at the table might be cheating. No one wins in that situation. So my advice is this. Game masters, tell your players that you expect an honest game and that you trust them. Treat them like you trust them and make sure that they feel that trust from you. Honest mistakes are going to happen. That's just part of role-playing games, and when they inevitably do, help your players out, but don't immediately approach it with suspicion that maybe they're cheating. And if one of your players starts feeling like they're a little sketchy and they might be a cheater, they're hitting all the little warning bells and raising the alarms, talk to them. Don't dance around it, just simply talk to them. Players, talk to your game master. talk to the other players. Keep communication open between everybody, and it's not just one person's responsibility to handle it all, or you've got players that are talking to each other through the game master over every single issue. Tell them that even if they are being honest, that you're beginning to question it, and let the player correct that behavior. Put the ball into their court for that. Maybe they shouldn't be playing a character that's got so many spells or powers or abilities if they're having trouble keeping track of them all and we're getting a lot of bookkeeping issues. See if changing their routine or how they approach things might help their behavior or might help the problem. And if not, let them go. Because if you can't trust them, then you shouldn't be playing with them. And players, if a game master doesn't trust you, then you shouldn't be playing with them either. Nobody should have to feel that they don't play with somebody that they don't trust or doesn't trust them. So talk about it, address it, and if it can't be resolved, cut your losses and move on. Gaming is a group effort, and even a single cheater can affect the whole group, pulling their attention away from the game and diminishing everybody's fun. And if good people aren't enjoying the game, then those good people might begin leaving the game itself, and that's not what anybody wants because we want to keep those good players. I've brought up trust being key in several videos before, and every once in a while you get the rare commenter that says that that is unrealistic or that's naive. Get real, they say. But having played in groups that lack trust as well as played in groups that have total trust and have experienced the difference between the two, I wouldn't play it any other way.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews and how-tos, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, amigos, y'all have a great day. Hey, check it out, another 20. I guess I'm just lucky.